Hey everyone, we're doing an over-the-shoulder braid for this one. I'm starting at the top of my page with the part, so where your hair would normally part, and establishing where my face is. So my shape of the face and the jaw, slight chin, and the jaw once more. Remember, your hairline is not going to be necessarily super straight. It might have a wave or curls depending on how curly or wavy your hair is. As I'm working, I'm very, very light starting off because I want to be able to edit just in case I do make a mistake. Make sure your neck is relatively substantial. You don't want to have a bobble-headed neck. It should start at about the jaw, and then still working with the hair. When you work with hair, it's always good to think with chunks as opposed to any specific shapes, or any specific lines, I should say. And I am going to do an over-the-shoulder braid, as I stated earlier, and it's just going to be a very simplistic braid, but I'm going to have my person have relatively long hair. As you work, you have to think about how thick the hair is going to be. So some people have really thin hair, some people have very thick hair. So that's going to make a difference in how your drawing ends up as well. But with braids, you just kind of start with a zigzag and build from there. Remember, you might have random hairs as you work too. One side, since it is off the shoulder on one side, the other side might have a couple strands, but probably not much. And my head got a little big there, or my hair shape, I should say. So I gotta edit that. Getting a little bit more hair on this side. Once you're happy with your base drawing, you are good to start on your values. And I'm going to start with the part again. Right on the edge of the face there'll be a slight shadow, so you can always add that in starting off if you're confident. Now, I did mention that it's always smart to start off with shapes, and you want to think about the very block areas, so the dark areas where your shadows are going to be found within your hair. Because even though you do have individual strands, when you look at a person or when you look at a photo, it's more common to see where the highlights are and where the lowlights might be than any individual strands of hair. You see clumps, so that's what you should draw. Remember, if one piece is behind in a darker area, it should be darker, so you use a lot of pressure as you're drawing. And you can gradually lighten that up with less pressure, or having your lines not quite so close together. And maybe not as many. But keeping my lines curved and paying attention to where objects overlap. And starting off on my other side now. Remember, if you ever want to, you can always use the side of your pencil, and that's going to help with shading. You can cover more area, and it also tends to give you a little bit more control if you're trying to block in a certain spot. Has a slightly different look to it. Make sure you're still following your lines and your shape. Having your lines curving in different spots is really going to help bring life to your hair, but still focusing in on clumps, not necessarily all of it at the same time. If you want to add in a couple specific hairs, you of course can do that, but it's always best to focus on chunks when you're working with hair. Once you do get down to your braid, because remember we're doing an off-the-shoulder braid, the edges are always where it wraps around the hair. They're always going to be a little bit darker, and they have a tendency to have a lighter area in the middle, and that's where your highlight would be. And this is going to repeat, go all the way down. It might be a little different in some spots, and maybe you have random hairs sticking out. Maybe your braid got a little messed up when you did the actual braid in your hair. Or if you're looking at a reference photo, maybe the person's braid is slightly different. So always be paying attention to that. But generally speaking, darker along the edges and lighter in the middle. And our braid slowly starts to take shape, and we're moving back into our hair. I'm doing a lot of hatching as I go, so a lot of lines that are close together. That's how I'm shading the majority of this. And I'm just going to have the top part of my head and my hair for this drawing be relatively light. At this point, you probably could say finished, but I'm going to go in with a blending tool and soften up some of my lines, make it a little bit more gradual in different areas, and bring in a few more values. Remember, when you do this, your blending tool is going to have a tendency to take away some of your highlights. It's also going to have a tendency to take away some of your shadows and your really, really dark spots. So it kind of grays everything out. So once you soften up your lines, it's always advisable to go back in with a pencil. But again, it's your drawing, so it's going to be up to you. I have a variety of different blending tools that I use. I tend to like the smaller ones a little bit more than the bigger ones. I feel like I have more control. But again, it's more of a personal choice than anything else. Right now I'm using an eraser as a pencil almost. So erasing in any specific hairs and getting some cool effects for highlights. And there we go.